Jonny Mirkin. Welcome to the Dunedin Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic to have you here. I'm very excited to hear about the current adventure that you're off on. Would you like to let the community know who you are particularly and what you're representing today?
Sure. I guess my name's Jonny. I'm born and raised here in Dunedin, so lived most of my life here. Ended up going through school and then studied law, and then went off overseas for a little bit. Came back, went off overseas again for a little bit. Back, and so been away a few times, and then have been here again for the last kind of 5-6 years. And I've been doing all kinds of things over the years. But,
I know.
Yeah.
So Dunedin had a bit of a pull. You returned 3 times, maybe 4.
Yeah. Dunedin's home. It always has been. I think for us it's been, especially in kind of 20s and 30s, taking those opportunities to get away when you can and see parts of the world. So I managed to get some study over in the States for a while, a bit of time in London with my last startup, and same for Australia as well. But Dunedin's home. We got 3 young kids, and you can't beat Dunedin.
Family in Dunedin.
It's just family-friendly schools, everything. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
So you dropped in the word startup there.
Yes.
I think you're fairly well recognised as one of the startup kings of Ōtepoti Dunedin. That's from my perspective anyway.
I'd say one of the ones who's trying to get there.
Yeah.
I think it's a journey. Like I certainly wouldn't claim any success yet. Like we've had a lot of hype around some of the things we've done, but by no means, I'm not.
Well, outwardly, I would say that you're highly recognised and valued from our startup community. And I know that you've supported many others in their journey as well. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And so let's talk about Givenwell.
Sure.
I'm already familiar in a small way with the platform.
Yeah.
And I think there's just such an enormous need for what you're offering. And I love that you've found a niche. So let's unpack that.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is Givenwell?
Wow, it's evolving. I was trying to count this morning. It's probably my 3rd or 4th go at startup. So when I was doing my last startup, which was Nomos One, which was kind of the one that I spent the last kind of 10 years on. As I was going through that process, scaling, I found myself quite unwell at one point. I was putting a lot of my time and energy into the business, and I think a lot of the startup world, and you listen to the podcast and you hear all the founder stories and you see the celebration around how much of yourself can you give to your startup. And so you hear the stories of Elon Musk, sleeping on the floor of the factory, and it's kind of almost like a dogma, and people celebrate it like this religion. And so I figured that's how you're meant to do startups. And so at the time we had some angel investment, and we were kind of still trying to find product market fit. And it was very much those early days of that's what I was doing. I was putting everything I had into it. So I wasn't looking after my body. I wasn't, putting any time or investment into relationships or anything around me other than my kind of first baby, my startup.
Yeah.
And so when I got to a point where my body started to actually just shut down on me, and I was in hospital at one point with something that I shouldn't have got sick with, but I did as a result of being so burnt out, I kind of took a bit of a moment to take check on myself and go, actually, this isn't sustainable. If I want to succeed in what I'm trying to do in the business world, actually I need to succeed in my life. And you kind of can't have one without the other. And so I don't know how many years ago that was, probably 7 or 8 years ago now. So I kind of had a huge shift in my perspective on life and what it meant to be well. And I'd never really considered well-being as a thing to even think about.
It's woo-woo.
Yeah, it's just kind of a buzzword that's out there. And my now wife said to me, hey, look, why don't you try therapy? And I was like, hey, this is something that is a great suggestion, but probably not for me. Thank you very much. And then after a couple more, hey, maybe you should, I realised, this is actually, you should.
Yeah. There's some boundary talks about to happen.
Exactly. So I kind of thought, okay, look, I'll give it a go. And we essentially said, look, go to a session, and if it's not for you, then that's fine. Just go to one. And so I went along and found somebody, and then that turned into 7 years of weekly psychotherapy, and absolutely transformed just my life in every way you can imagine. So I try and describe to people the process. For me, the only way I can really explain it is my life was black and white, and then by the end of it, it's colour. So it was quite encompassing in terms of the change. So my relationships and my health, and I started working out and doing all kinds of different things. And as a result of that, I kind of became a bit of a, I don't know, not a spokesperson, but I became really excited by this idea of how transformative therapy and investing in your wellbeing can be. And so when I finished up with my last startup and finished up as CEO a few years ago, I took a couple of years off. So I said to my wife, look, no more startups for a few years. And I got roped in to go to the university and teach the Masters Entrepreneurship there. So I did that for a few years, which was really awesome, being able to help other wannabe founders who were starting and get them underway, which was awesome. And then the technology paper there. And so did that with a few other projects. And then me, being me, I started getting a bit bored and kind of leant more and more into doing another startup. And then so about 2 years ago now, decided I'll give it another go. And when I was thinking about like, what am I going to do? There were a couple of projects I was working on, but there was one that was just so obvious, was how can I help other founders and other people avoid burning out like I did, but actually living their best lives. And so that's a very long-winded answer to Givenwell, but that was my journey. So ended up saying, look, I want to do something in the wellbeing space. And for years you see all these ideas of, we've got this new app for wellbeing and there's this new this and speakers this, and it's kind of, when I did some research into the space, I took to my first investors for Givenwell. I said, look, here is a chart and it shows suicide rates over time. It shows anxiety, it shows depression, it shows burnout, it shows all of these factors. And every single graph, you see it getting worse. And it's like, on one hand, we're saying we're trying to shine a light on wellbeing and burnout and saying we're doing all these new things. But at the same time, we are just as unwell as we've ever been, if not most unwell. So it's like something had to be done different. And so we kind of said, instead of going and doing the normal startup thing where you kind of have your idea, you build your product, you launch it and you hope for the best, we spent 6 months researching. So we didn't have a single line of code or any product, and I just went around New Zealand and in Australia and just talked to anyone who would chat with me and just said, any CEOs or chief people, HR kind of people, and just said, what are you doing now? What's working? What's not working? And it was awesome because through that journey I had, conversations with people who were head of wellbeing for 10,000, 100,000 person businesses, meeting and having a coffee and having a chat, and it was awesome, and just getting those insights. And also teams of 2 and teams of 10. And it was a really interesting journey because as I went through that, I was taking notes along the way of what are the issues. And as I started to kind of culminate all of the research and insights, they all said exactly the same thing. And ultimately what we discovered was, when it came to wellbeing of teams, a lot of our energy was going into bottom of the cliff. So people are already unwell, let's use EAP, we've got health insurance, we have these initiatives. And another big part of it was this idea around whatever we're doing, we're kind of having to roll out across our whole team as the wellbeing solution.
Here it is.
Yeah, so here, team of 30 people, we've just signed up for this new thing.
Yeah,
here
everybody needs to go to the gym, or everybody should eat apples every day.
Exactly. And so what we heard over and over was that not only is it not having any impact, but engagement was just super low. So these organisations are just throwing all this time.
People still want choice, don't they?
Exactly. And so that kind of inspired us to do Givenwell, which was this idea of, our hypothesis fundamentally is that if you step out of the way and you empower people to care for themselves in their own way, then that's going to have a far greater impact on wellbeing. And so that was my reflection on my journey. I was like, well, actually, it wasn't something that came from externally. It was me going through therapy, and then I fell in love with personal training in the gym, and I worked with nutritionists. And I was like, that was my journey. But other people, it could be yoga, it could be Pilates, it could be meditation, it could be whatever it is. And so we raised some more money about 2 years ago. We started building a team here in Dunedin, and then we launched our first product, end of August last year now.
August 2024.
Yeah. So it took about 18 months to build, and now we're on the startup journey of
And did you play a role in that building of the product? Was that something that you were able to let yourself do, or?
Yeah, so I'm not a coder, so I don't know how to write code.
Yeah.
But I was really fortunate in getting somebody really good early on who's amazing, and then he built his team around. So they were really good. One thing that I kind of learned in my last startup was whenever I stepped away from product, it would sometimes get a bit away from kind of the core mission vision.
Yeah.
And so this time around, I've just been really clear on being kind of product owner in that kind of role. So yeah, it's been really good having conversations, then having that back to the team and iterating, and it's been good.
Do you think starting and founding in Dunedin has benefits? Does Dunedin offer a unique benefit for somebody like yourself with the product?
Yeah, I think it does. It came down to when we were hiring at the beginning, I'd say it was really hard originally to find good people. And it wasn't because they weren't here, it's because the market was just so competitive, and most of the good developers and people like that were actually getting poached by international companies, and they were working, $6-figure US dollar salaries.
That would have been end of 2022.
Yeah, exactly.
Peak.
Exactly.
Business is awesome. Economy's great.
Yeah. So it was really hard at that time. Yeah. But then recently when we go to market, we might have 50 to 100 applicants now. So it has really kind of shifted, where I think there are a lot of really good people who are here, who want to be based here. And one of the other big trends that we saw was when we were starting in 22, that was at the time where remote first was the trend. And so virtually every founder of any tech company I knew who were building teams were building remote first, and they're building global teams. Yes. And I remember talking to Leo, who helped me get started, and we were saying, what makes more sense for us? And we decided, no, actually we're going to build a fully in-person team in Dunedin. We're not going to do remote at all. And at the time, that was kind of seen as
anti-people, anti-wellness even.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's funny because when we went to market, the people who were applying, they were actually telling us, I can't wait to be back in person with a team. That's what they've been missing is there have been, most of the people who have been hired were working remotely, and they've been just missing that connection. And so, we're 10 of us now. We're in an office in Dunedin, but we're thriving on that in-person collaboration and whiteboards and high fives, and you have a bell that rings when a new customer joins. And it's just that kind of stuff that you sometimes miss in that work.
You're singing from my song.
Yeah. So
in the agency environment, we had pressure to go remote and to recruit people internationally and do it for $2 an hour. Absolutely does not align with our values. We get out from COVID, we all come back to the office, we're back to working collaboratively.
Yeah.
And totally agree.
Yeah. Well, when we're doing our research, as we're kind of preparing to start building, a huge amount of that was around this kind of loneliness epidemic that we were seeing. And so a lot of the research was seeing that a lot of the more established people in their roles, so once you're in your kind of 40s, 50s, people didn't mind so much being remote because they kind of had their life, they were remote, they were just doing their thing. Right. But where the real struggle is graduates, the 20-year-olds in particular, where if you think of somewhere like one of the big accounting firms, and to learn in that environment, you need to buddy up with the partner and you need to attend the client meetings and you need to kind of see what's going on around you. As soon as they go remote, you don't have any of that exposure. You don't have those incidental opportunities to go and meet with a client or sit in on something.
Social cues, being able to talk about the weather face to face.
Exactly.
Just osmosis, learning about people and how to behave and communicate. Totally get it.
Yeah. So Dunedin, for that point, has actually been really good for us because being an in-person team, we don't have to fight with lots of traffic and lots of huge expenses of being an in-person team.
As long as you have parking. We've got to talk about parking when we live in Dunedin, don't we?
Yeah. Well, our team get a wellbeing allowance, and one of them actually bought an e-bike with theirs. So,
look. Yeah. That's the exact primary reason, isn't it?
Yeah.
That person gets to choose how they spend the wellness allowance. And so, look, how does it work?
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important. We do want to sell the platform here, don't we? How does Givenwell work?
So what we ended up doing was saying, okay, how can we find a way to let people essentially choose their own wellbeing? And the hypothesis is if someone chooses for themselves, first of all, they're going to choose something they want. And then secondly, they're going to choose something that's going to have impact for them. As soon as you have an owner of a business saying, hey, look, here's this thing, it's going to diminish in its value. So we looked around to see what was out there. We couldn't see anything. The closest that we found was this idea of a wellbeing allowance, where a business says, hey team, we're going to give you all $100 a month, go and join a gym or go and do Pilates or get an e-bike or talk to a therapist, whatever it is that someone wants. And we interviewed a lot of organisations who were doing that, and they had been doing it generally by staff would go out and spend the money, they'd come back and then they'd get paid back by the business. And so we interviewed the staff and the businesses and tried to understand what was working and what wasn't. And fundamentally, we heard a couple of things. One was that staff won't spend on the most meaningful things because their boss or HR team are going to know, oh, Johnny's been at, the therapist or, whatever. And so they go, oh, actually, I'll just buy some running shoes. And so you kind of get this lower impact for the allowance. The second thing we've actually had, Buttle Finlay looked into some of the Privacy Act issues around that, and we discovered that actually there's a whole lot of Privacy Act issues of an employer because it's health data. And so that's not great. And then the administration on the business to actually work out who's been paid, how much. And then someone comes and says, oh, look, I want to buy a rice cooker. I want piano lessons. I want this. And you've got to make these kind of decisions of, oh, yeah, that's well-being, that's not well-being. And so more times than not, we found that the intent of empowering people was there, but just the execution, it wasn't working. And so we said, well, what if we can find a way to make the allowance spending confidential and take away a lot of the administration from the employer side and then have it in a way that whenever it was spent, it was only on wellbeing. And that was our brief to ourselves. And what we came up with, ultimately what Givenwell now is it's a platform where an employer creates a wellbeing allowance for their team. And so they might give them, it can be a one-off. So we have a bunch of teams around Dunedin who just did Christmas last year and gave their teams Christmas and Givenwell. Others will do a recurring regular allowance. And then what happens is their team get access to the Givenwell marketplace. And so what we've got now is about 600 or 700 wellbeing suppliers all around the country, from all of the Les Mills gyms to BFT to therapists, ADHD coaches and Pilates and you name it, anything wellbeing, it's in there. And staff can essentially browse through the marketplace, find what it is that draws them in, and then redeem their allowance confidentially without the employer knowing how they're spending it.
Simple.
And so it's been really awesome, and we've been expanding the marketplace. And then just last week, we've now got a feature where if there's something somebody wants that isn't in the marketplace, they can actually upload their own receipt and then get reimbursed. And so we're getting bombarded now with claims of people who have had their existing gym memberships or whatever and can now claim those. So we've been expanding there, and we're slowly building out more stuff. So we've got a health insurance thing that's just gone live, and we've got some EAP stuff coming. And so
it's that two-sided marketplace challenge, isn't it?
It's been really awesome, where I think in the wellbeing industry they get it. Like they're there because they're passionate about wellbeing, and they've bought in really quickly into this idea of, hey, the more people we can help and support and reach, the better. And so we've had some amazing brands and companies who have joined on, before we had customers. And now that we have got customers, it's been awesome to see them start to spend with the suppliers. So
not looking for confidential information, but roughly how many times has the bell rung to say, we've got a new customer?
It's doing all right. I think we rang it 2 or 3 times last week.
Good.
We just had one customer in Aussie signed up, which will double our size, so that's pretty cool. So because we launched in Australia in November, and so most of our traction we think for this year is going to actually be into Australia more.
Beautiful.
So
how are you attracting the customers in Aussie? Like, that's often a challenge for startups, particularly those that start in little old Dunedin. We look across and go, oh, Australia, 30 million. No, I don't know, 45
it's
million?
a big number. I know there's 3 million SMEs, so it's a decent market. So in terms of how we did it, we started with New Zealand and said, okay, well, because I wouldn't say we found product market fit. I think that often gets called too early in a startup. So we've got enough customers now where we're pretty close to thinking we're there. But what we did at the end of last year is said, well, we need to run an experiment. We need to see, is the opportunity in Australia there? So often you get so scared. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor, you don't want to, don't look at that spot on my arm because it could be something bad, so you don't ask. So I think similarly when you're a startup, sometimes you like to put on a slide deck all the opportunity, but it's very scary to actually ask the questions of, would you want this there? And so when we launched in Australia, we made the decision to invest in the sponsoring the Wellbeing Summit over there in Sydney and Melbourne. And so we were there for 3 days, and we had the opportunity to present and run some workshops and speak with a bunch of people over there. And our conversations were along the lines of, this is what we're building.
Would you want it?
We think it's good. Does it work for Australian market? And, we went with our eyes wide open thinking one thing that could happen is people go, oh, yeah, you're like that. And, competitor X is sitting there already with the market locked up. Or they could have gone, oh, that's a great idea, but how does it work with this legislation or whatever? And so fortunately for us, we were blown away. And at the conference, we had people coming up all the time saying, this is amazing, I'd love to get you into our team, And we probably had 40 or 50 demos booked on the back of that one conference. So it was pretty awesome to get that response. And so that's when we knew, Australia's a really awesome market opportunity. And we've now had our first few Aussies sign up, which is pretty cool. So,
fabulous.
Yeah, and we did that with my last one. So by the time we sold, we had, I think, probably 80 or 90% of our revenue was Australia. So I think for startups, if you're weightless goods, you're an export of digital, I think the sooner you can get into somewhere like Australia, the better. Just the opportunity is so much bigger and
Are you feeling comfortable? You're feeling like, we've got to that point and now Johnny's able to breathe and think, right, I'm on the right trajectory here. Do you think that's in your psyche?
I think we're definitely on the right trajectory. So we're always raising money. We're always trying to make sure that we have enough to keep going at the speed we need to. I think one of the big learnings of my last time doing startup is we were just so undercapitalized for so long, and we were never able to fully invest in opportunities. And so this time around, we've probably raised 10 times more than I had in the last one at this stage. So I think in terms of being able to invest properly, we've done it really well, and we're seeing that in the growth. So,
you played big from the start as well.
We did. We went quite aggressive, and we did a lot of marketing, a lot of brand launch stuff, and we did a lot of work in the product and getting it right before launch.
And it's all those lessons you've had along the way from the previous one.
That's right. And so even just understanding, for me, I'm not great at managing. Right, so when it comes to people and accountability,
you're way too kind.
No, I'm just, for whatever reason, my brain does not work that way, and I'm really strong when I'm an individual contributor, when I'm just executing on something. And so, even just having the awareness this time, we've brought in a COO, and he is essentially the CEO of the business, while I can do other bits, but. Yeah, look, I think we're getting all the right signs. We've been able to show a hockey stick for the first kind of 6 months, which is always the dream.
Totally.
And it's just whether that hockey stick will keep hockey sticking or plateau. But all signs are showing it's looking good. So
congratulations.
I'll take a breath in 12 months, I think. Let's see.
Fantastic. Look, we're just about out of time, unbelievably so. But I really would like to ask, is there anybody in particular or organisations that you'd like to thank for where you've got to so far? And I think that might be time over once you've talked about that.
Yeah, organisations. Yeah, look, well, I think I think for me, it's not so much organisations, but I think it's just that founder tech community. So what's really awesome is there's quite an open dialogue between us. So there's a number of founders who have been ahead in terms of, you know, whether it's the Ryans and the Timeleys or the Smith brothers and EP, or there's ADI. Like, there's so many great stories that have kind of shown that it's possible to build a global tech business out of Dunedin. And some of the best people, like, sit down for a coffee with Jason Long or someone like that, and they're just the most down-to-earth, humble, awesome people you'll meet. And I think for me, those are the people, I think, if anything. So it's not so much
they're absolute
direct support. It's just the people who have led the way, but done it in a way that kind of normalises it and breaks through those ceilings.
Yeah, they're going to hate that I'm going to tag them into this and shout out and say thank you. But they're also those people that don't naturally put their hands up and say, "Look at me." It really does fly under the radar.
Yeah.
But they are. I don't know. They're not the godfathers, because that would be a terrible thing to say. But they are just incredible heroes that I know our younger entrepreneurial people would love to be able to acknowledge as well. So,
and I think that's definitely the part, I think, of Dunedin is a lot of the ego is removed from a lot of that success.
It is.
I think in other parts of the country or the world, you know, the ego goes with, whereas I think Dunedin, we've very much normalised that, hey, you can succeed on a really grand scale.
Yeah.
And you can still be an awesome
shown by your reluctance to accept a similar title at the start of this podcast, and then throwing in the fact that you'd been asked to be the lead on the entrepreneurial course down at the University of Otago. So thank you for being who you are.
Well, thank you.
And would you just like to wrap up by letting the community know how they can access Givenwell, perhaps, and anything else that you want them to know before we say goodbye?
Well, if anyone's particularly nosy, you can go to Catalyst Cafe and just head upstairs, because we're right above.
Awesome.
So, we can shout a coffee. But, we have our website, Givenwell.com. That's the best way, is to just check that out.
Well done on naming the Givenwell.com.
Yes. We actually had a different name before Givenwell.
Did you?
But we decided that it didn't work. So we actually have the .com for that.
So, and that redirects, and nobody needs to know. Fair enough.
Yeah, but no, just reach out to us, and always keen to have a yarn. We've got probably 10 or 15 good local SME Dunedin businesses using Givenwell already, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so,
soon to be firebrand, I believe.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. So, so that's great.
Thanks, Jonny. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All the best for the next steps.
Appreciate it.